Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure that we are sort of coming together all across the world, all the DAG Hub, to have this side event jointly organizing. And it's like I would really thank everyone, all the country hub, especially Peru, South Africa, and Trinidad and Tobago, to just come forward and say yes to this side event to jointly present. So I am really delighted to have all of you together, and this shows that how much we are actually together mentally to fight for the issue of that green economy and for the issue of the MSMEs. So without further delay, I would like to invite our chairperson, Dr. Ashok Khosla, who is an eminent scientist and the social reformer, and who is also chairperson of Development Alternative, to introduce and kickstart the event. Thank you. Dr. Khosla, over to you.
Thank you. Can I come up where you are? Thank you. Hello there. I can't see many of you, so I'm not sure how many of you I'm addressing, but Geetika asked me to just share a few thoughts with you about this really fundamentally important issue, which is how do we finance the sector of the economy that can make the greatest change, the greatest contribution to a green future, an inclusive future, and yet has no access or very little access to the funds and support systems that it needs. For the last 20 years, in fact, purely by coincidence, last night I was looking at a paper I wrote, I think in the year 2000, studying the availability of funds to different parts of the economy. And I found that large companies get, let us say, X, where X is several billion dollars a year in terms of credit and loans, equity finance, and so on. Medium-sized enterprises get something of the order of 1/5 of that. Small enterprises, defined as fairly sizable enterprises, but in the formal sector, get something like about 1/2 of that. And then there's nothing else left behind except at the very bottom end, and this has continued over the last 15, 20 years, there is the micro enterprises. And again, they are not too badly off. They have a lot of programs, sometimes associated with agriculture, sometimes associated with gender issues, livelihood issues, usually household industries, crafts industries, and so on, which actually have, at least in my country, in India, access to not unreasonable amounts of money. Nowhere near the other sectors, but enough to have a fairly vibrant micro enterprise sector. Where it's missing is what I call the mini enterprise, the ones that are bigger than the micro and smaller than small. These are the enterprises that have somewhere between 5 and maybe 50 employees. These are the enterprises that have roughly an investment of the order of $10,000 to maybe $100,000. These are the enterprises that actually produce and market products and OEMs for bigger companies, products that are really needed in the local economy, create jobs, large numbers of jobs, and are in need of terrifically important supports for their environmental impacts and for their social impacts. But above all, they don't have any money. These are actually reputed, whenever I did my research and talked to bankers, to be among the best in terms of repaying their loans. But the cost of processing those loans, the cost of transaction, are so high for an individual small loan of that order of magnitude that bankers balk at lending. And financial institutions don't seem to see this sector. So I just thought I would inject a little bit into this conversation, a little bit of a different idea that hasn't been coming up in the literature recently, though I personally have written quite a lot about it, which is what I would call mini There can be other terms. The government of India calls it tiny occasionally and something else. But mini, as distinct from micro and smaller than small, is the area, it seems to me, that is the most important for what we call in this coalition the blue-green enterprise. The mini enterprise that is going to make a profitable business doing the right thing by both environment and by society. So I hope that you all will give a little thought to first exploring whether I'm right or wrong. My figures for India are that there's a huge dip in this little sector and it goes hugely up. Micro, fairly sizable, small, bigger, and in between is nothing. And in between is where the real action is, both in rural and in peri-urban enterprises and businesses. So I would really like to just inject a thought into the proceedings of this meeting and of the future work of the coalition, that we need to really be a little more granular in terms of looking at where the missing links are, in terms of finance, in terms of technology support, in terms of marketing support, and what we do about it. The answer to the last question, what do we do about it, seems to me to lie not only in helping banks and financial agencies cover some of the costs, maybe from public funds, of the appraisal process, of the approval process for the projects. And part of it, because by their nature, these micro enterprises, the mini enterprises are so relevant to blue-green outcomes that they get some carbon and other credits. We will soon be seeing biodiversity credits. We will be soon seeing other kinds of social bonds and so on. And as we do, it seems to me that this sector, which is actually one of the most important employment generators and producers of locally needed goods and services, getting a much larger support. Having said that, I think what you have on your agenda is terrific, it's very important. And my own colleagues here, particularly led by Geetika, have been doing terrific work in not only studying these things, but putting them into our application work through our sister agencies like TARA, where we actually try to support enterprises doing these things. So Geetika, thank you for inviting me, and I think I've just had a good time.
Thank you. And Stuart, over to you.
Thank you very much, Geetika. Thank you very much, Dr. Khosla. Local green enterprises struggle to get financing for their businesses. We're really worried about this, and we want to hear from 4 of our hubs on their experiences in trying to change finance access to small enterprises. This has been happening through COVID. It's an extraordinary moment right now, and we're going to hear from our hubs talking about what exactly are the issues with small green enterprises getting access to finance, and what are they doing about it. So 4 inspiring stories, and we're going to start back where we started with India. Tanya and Stella, over to you. May I introduce Tanya Isar, Stella George from the Indian Development Alternatives. Thank you. You have 6 minutes.
Right. I hope I'm audible, Stuart, and the screen is visible.
Yes, thank you. You're great.
Thank you. Right. So basically, as Stuart said, this particular presentation is regarding the work the Development Alternatives has been undertaking as the Green Economy Coalition Hub in India. So quickly going through the outline, we'll be briefly sharing a bit about Development Alternatives, its principles, its approach, which is actually the strength and what it actually brings to the table being a hub in India. That will be followed by the work that DA has been carrying out in the last couple of years, trying to mainstream green economy in India. Then we'd like to throw some light on the current phase of work, which focuses on greening the existing financial system in order to help small green businesses avail finance. And then we'll move to addressing these 3 questions. What stops local green enterprises from accessing finance in India? What are enterprises and their support networks asking for? And what are we doing about it? So I'll briefly tell you a bit about development alternatives. So DA is a think and do tank, which is actually, it's a civil society organization working with policymakers, the corporate sector, civil society organizations, influencing practice and taking the lessons from practice to policy. And the agenda is to enhance sustainable livelihoods and sustainable development, ensuring that sustainable development reaches scale. For this, it engages in scientific research and innovation, demonstration of eco-solution, and also communication, policy advocacy, and building capacities of the entrepreneurs to disseminate this innovation at scale. And the colored areas over here show the geographical outreach of DA's work. And DA has been particularly working with small enterprises for over 2 decades, as Dr. Khosla mentioned in his opening remarks. Quickly moving to a bit of work that has already been done. So as the national hub in India, what DA has been doing, it's been creating social movements, bringing together existing actors in the ecosystem to take forward and catalyze the transition towards a green economy with a focus on micro, small and medium enterprises, and in particular micro and small enterprises, I would say. And the approach that has been adopted is to connect people, bring them together, get them talking, share their experiences and learning, and to co-work, co-develop and create solutions for a better new economy. So a few outcomes that we'd like to share is the work that we did was in 3 sector geography combinations. The first one was the agriculture and allied sector in the Bundelkhand region, which is where DA has been working for over 3 decades. There, consultations were conducted with farmer producer organizations, CSOs and other partners and relevant district and state officials to understand the challenges that were faced by these entrepreneurs and help mainstream sustainable agricultural practices. As a result of which, in Madhya Pradesh, the government has been planning to draft an organic agriculture policy, keeping in mind the ill health concerns of chemical fertilizers. And they got in touch with a few CSO organizations, and DA was one of them. Similarly, in Bihar, green economy dialogues were largely centered around environmental challenges that were posed by the red brick manufacturing sector, and it used technologies that were very polluting, for which there was a need to explore alternatives of brick making, where fly ash emerged as one of them. There were a lot of dialogues, consultations, workshops, and fairs that were conducted. And moving ahead, the third state that we had was Sikkim, where we focused on the tourism sector. Here again, a lot of consultations were held, and what was a major highlight here was when the government drafted their well-being of generations bill, which was a formal mechanism for Sikkim to track their progress on sustainable development. CSOs were consulted and DA was one of them, and this conversation is still on. These are a few of the networks and organizations that we partnered with at the local, state, and national level. These include CSOs, think tanks, financial institutions, government bodies, and business partners. Again, a snapshot of the few knowledge products that we developed and co-created with other partner organizations. Quickly moving towards the current phase of work. So basically what we learned till now is that the dialogues process have effectively demonstrated their value, and not just at the state level, but also at the national level. And so this needs to be continued. And we already knew this, and it got validated that MSMEs are crucial, and therefore it makes sense to help promote them environmentally, economically, and of course from a very social and inclusive perspective. And therefore for big impact in the economy, there is a need to invest in the small. And for this, the current phase of work is actually where we are trying to improve the investment climate for local green enterprises in India. These are the states in which we are currently working. And to throw some light on the issues and challenges faced by the entrepreneurs, I'd like to hand over to Tanya.
Okay, thank you, Stella. To address the first question, what stops local green enterprises from accessing finance in India? So we have identified few sectoral issues in agriculture, construction, and tourism as marked in the arrows. And the middle green triangle talks about the signature issues to access finance, which are the overlapping issues present all across in 3 sectors. So coming to the first, in agriculture, the first issue is of lack of technical skills and entrepreneurship spirit. So this is more particularly found in women, and they also lack business acumen, and they're also very dependent on the CSOs. because the CSOs are the ones who are more financially literate, and actually they are the ones who have more knowledge about marketing and business management. Therefore, they tend to become more dependent rather than being empowered. Second issue is about inadequate and absence of basic infrastructure. This includes irregular supply of electricity, poor transportation facilities, bad road conditions, and due to which the farming community, they're forced to sell, and they also have lack of cold storage facility. So because of this, the farming community, they tend to, they're forced to sell the produce in the market at a very tight time frame, and at whatever the price is that is being demanded in the market, and they lose the bargaining power. Third issue is of the gaps in value chain financing. This is more common, this is very prominent in the organic produce. Under construction, the first issue was of low market demand of fly ash bricks, and this is more amongst the general public, and they do not have, they are limited awareness about its environmental benefits. Second issues of the banks are reluctant to provide loans to the fly ash brick manufacturer because of low demand, and they feel that they are less viable and low credit worthiness. Third is of the poor technical skills of the fly ash brick manufacturers. Coming to the tourism sector is a very highly volatile sector, and it is very seasonally dependent, and it is active only for about 4 to 5 months. Second issue is that the banks tend to provide loans to only popular tourist destinations, like in India, to name a few, like Mussoorie, Nainital, and Manali. And this, because of this, the issue of overcapacity is present in these states, and the other states, other regions tend to be underdeveloped. Third issue is of the banks prefer to provide loans to vehicle or taxi related business, and not to the homestay kind of business, which actually runs on the green enterprise principles. Next slide. So here we'll be talking about the signature issues to access finance. Here we have further segregated into causes and consequences of each issue. So coming to the first issue, lack of accessibility information about formal sources of finance. This is the major cause for this issue, is because of there's no window for authentic information, and this leads to divide between services being offered and its end usage. Second issue is of preference. Second issue is a preference for informal finance amongst entrepreneurs. This is due to the complicated paperwork and sloppy and lengthy, tedious process of the banks. And this leads to accessing finance from friends and family, which is quicker, easier, and convenient. Third issue is of challenges in implementation of policy. The major cause for this one is delay in subsidy monies to entrepreneurs, absence of accountability, and huge number of unregistered enterprises running without any certification. And this further leads to this doesn't reach out to people on ground. Fourth issue is about poor repayment capacity of the entrepreneurs, and this is present all across all three sectors. And in construction, it is because of the low demand of fly ash bricks and seasonal dependent nature of tourism sector. Last issue is about government regulation, which negatively impact the entrepreneurs. So this is because of lack of clarity among the policymakers, which leads to bad debt and non-performing assets.
Thanks, Tanya. So quickly moving to our next question, what do enterprises and support networks require, and what are they asking for? So these are the few things that we identified: technology, finance, markets, governance, and building capacities and skills and awareness. So basically, I'll just pick a few points. There is a need for a platform where all information that is required for an entrepreneur is all aggregated and put all together, whether it's regarding government schemes, innovative financial models, new green technologies coming up. And there is also a need to provide training to improve the financial literacy of the entrepreneurs. Then there is also we also need to not just facilitate access to local markets for these LGEs, but also access to global markets. And the most important is a cost-effective green solution that is required, that is also easily implementable. Just picking a few points from each of these. And the last slide, basically here, we're trying to say, what is it that DA as the GEC hub in India is already doing to address this, and when there's a lot more to be done in each of it. So the first way, that is, we not just are part of the GEC network, but we're also part of other networks like Revitalizing Rain-Fed Agricultural Network, RRAN, focusing on sustainable agriculture. Then Vikalp Sangam is a network which creates a space of peer organizations to explore and understand alternative thinking and organize environmental, economic, and social issues in India. Then another way we do this is by expanding the existing networks, bringing on board more member organizations, communication by writing articles and issue-based blogs, and creating a platform called as MAPSA, which is mapping, which stands for Mapping Alternative Perspectives South Asia, where case studies from the ground are brought in and put forward to be shared for the world to see, basically, which gives evidence of the work that is happening on the ground. We are continuously conducting dialogues in the form of workshops, consultations, expert interviews, and most importantly, partnerships. So we are partnering with various organizations. Rangde is a financial aggregator, which is a platform to which connects lenders and borrowers being entrepreneurs, and DA connects entrepreneurs and brings them on board to the Rangde platform. Spurti is again a scheme of the Ministry of MSMEs, where an entity of the DA group is a nodal agency, which is helping in the regeneration of traditional industries and promoting cluster development. And the last possible way in which DA as a GEC hub is taking this agenda forward is by setting up platforms. Udyami is actually a platform where it's a digital platform that is catering to the needs of these micro enterprises. It bridges gaps in information, and it builds capacities of these entrepreneurs and helps them access high value markets. Samudyam is another such platform that has recently come up for inclusive entrepreneurship collaboration. It aims to bring together thought leaders, change makers, and innovators, and it promotes entrepreneurship for creating sustainable livelihoods at scale. So these are a few things that are already going on. There is a lot of work, as we have seen, that is required because of the challenges that exist in this space, and so a lot of more research needs to be commissioned so that we can understand the problem better, so that the right solutions could be found. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Listen, our presentations are taking a lot longer than I had expected, so I'm going to make an executive choice here. I think I'm going to cancel the panel session and just give us a little bit of time for the presentations. I would like to now welcome our next participant, which is Mr. Denis Mitchell from Trinidad and Tobago. Denis is going to be bringing to you the perspectives of local green enterprises and their difficulties in accessing finance within Trinidad and Tobago. Denis, it's a pleasure to have you here. Over to you. Tell us what's happening in the Caribbean, and if I could give you 6 to 7 minutes, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Stuart, and let me just get my presentation here. All right. All right, I'm assuming everyone is seeing it.
Yes, Denis, you're good.
Okay, all right, great.
I'm clear. Perhaps if you just go to full screen.
Yes, I'm about to do that. All right. Okay. So fresh out of a study that CANARI is conducting, we do have up-to-date information concerning the situation with regards to the financial situation and challenges faced by LGEs in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, let's just see what's going on here. What's happening? We have a bit of a technical issue here, which
Denis,
right.
Can I ask you, maybe you stop sharing your screen. Ben, could you please share the screen from Trinidad, your
okay,
screen,
all right, great.
the thing, and when you need a new slide, Denis, just call on next slide, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ben. Right, next slide, please. Okay, so just put things in context, Trinidad and Tobago is a small island state, just about 5,000 square kilometers in area, about 1.3 million people. And next slide, please, Ben, because I'm conscious of the time. In the Caribbean, and this is how we evaluate the local green enterprises. We have found that they are both formal and informal businesses. They usually tend to be small enterprises, social enterprises, which use natural resources, usually based in rural communities. And the aim is to deliver a triple bottom line benefits in terms of economic, social, and environmental benefits. Next slide, please. What we've discovered in terms of the challenges faced by the sector is that there's a lack of an agreed definition of how do we define what an LGE really is. In addition to that, there is a lack of knowledge within the country about what the sector really is about. What is an LGE? In addition to that, we've also discovered that there's no legal status for what is a social and green enterprises. So that is not defined at all. Also, for those enterprises that are classified as LGEs, there's limited access to traditional markets. And even among the LGEs themselves, there's very few networks. There are very few networks and association among them. So many of them operate in silos and in isolation. Next slide, please. Of course, there are other challenges in the area when it comes to policy and strategy. Taken from a macro perspective, there is no national master plan when it comes to having a government focus as to what an LGE is about or what the sector is about. In addition to that, we have discovered that there is incoherent and very weak policy framework for the LGEs. And what little policy that exists, there is very, very poor implementation of those already incoherent and weak policies. Next slide, please. Oh, but we all know that when it comes to finance, there's lots of challenges when it comes to that. We've noticed, as a matter of fact, based on our interviews with the LGEs, with the entrepreneurs, they have said that when it comes to getting funding, the financial products and grants are not tailored specifically to their needs as LGEs. Also, we have noticed as well, we discovered is that commercial financing almost never exists for the LGEs. Where there are policies, financial policies for these for the LGEs, there's weak financial inclusion. So it means that the LGEs struggle a lot in finding funding for their businesses. Also, what we have been told ad nauseum is that when it comes to collateral requirements, because many of them tend to be social enterprises, they do not tend to have the asset-based collateral that is required by most financial organizations. So they find that when it comes to the requirements requested by financial agencies, they simply do not have the appropriate financial requirements. Next slide, please. When it comes to business support services, what we have discovered in our research is that whatever existing services exist are not, again, geared specifically to the unique needs of the LGE sector specifically. So you find then that a lot of the LGEs are struggling to find assistance in developing, for instance, capacity, because the existing business development support services do not really cater to their needs. Since most of the LGEs tend to be in the rural communities, we have discovered as well too that many of the services tend not to go to the LGEs or to the rural communities. What we have noticed is that there's a system where the LGEs who are located in the rural areas, in the rural communities, are required to come to the urban areas where you find then that the services are existing. And that is a detriment to many of the LGEs. Also as well too, you find that when it comes to these services, what the entrepreneurs would really like is to have a one-stop system where at one location they can get the financial advice, they can get legal advice, advisory and capacity building services. But currently it is very fragmented. So what happens is that they tend to find themselves having to go many places, in addition to the fact, as I said before, that they are located in rural communities. So they have to be going many, hither and thither to get the services required to develop their businesses. Next slide, please. So when it comes to opportunities in financing, what we have noticed is that it would be an ideal thing to create a tiered system for financing. So where there's a mix of grants, you have a mix of loans, venture capital, and angel financing, to again, and this is what we want to underline and stress, to match the needs of the LGEs. So it is not a case of a one-size-fits-all. The LGEs need to be evaluated and examined, and suitable financing needs to be appropriated to the needs, to satisfy the needs of each and every LGE. Then we can look at exploring opportunities to tailor the existing financing that exists currently. So for instance, we can look at link corporate ESG commitments, as well as looking at the eligibility of grant programming. Another opportunity would be to explore the development of sector-specific financial cooperatives. So for instance, if an LG, it's more in the area of, let's say, tourism, you can have a tourism-based financial cooperative. If it's more in the area of agriculture, once again, you can have a sector-based agriculture. Once again, what we are seeing is that it is not a situation where one size fits all. But if you can actually look at a possibility of having, as I said, sector-based cooperatives, that could be an option as well too. Next slide. What can be done in terms of strengthening the policy and regulatory framework? Definitely, there needs to be an inventory of the sector and clearly defining what is an LGE. Another crucial aspect would be to identify like a champion ministry and agency that would run with the idea of supporting LGEs, as well as including or creating an intersectoral committee. What could also work as well too is to pilot a model of coordinated approach in supporting LGEs at the local level, sharing lessons, in other words, lessons learned, and advocating for scaling up when it comes to the policy development of the LGE sector. Next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. Very important. Many LGEs suffer from capacity building. And what can be done to strengthen the capacity building is to promote and provide, when it comes to structured capacity building, you can have better support agencies so that they are equipped specifically to support the needs of LGEs. And this is something that we would emphasize and we would focus a lot on, specifically supporting the LGE sector. It is a subset of the MSME sector, so that you can have things like mentoring programs to support the LGEs, having collaborative agencies supporting the LGEs as well too. And very importantly, there should be a system in which the LGEs themselves form associations and networks and associations, because crucially, they are the ones who are on the ground who understand themselves better than I would dare say the policymakers. So if there could be a way in which the LGEs can unite, can form associations, can form networks, definitely we believe among the other recommendations made, that can be used, those things can be used to strengthen capacity of the LGEs. And thank you very much for your time. And this is our recommendations from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much.
Denis, thank you very much. How very clear, how very precise. I've been enriched by your presentation. Thank you for all your contributions here. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Leslie Forsyth. Leslie is the director of Foro Nacional Internacional, a Peruvian think tank, a GEC member, who are doing similar work on unlocking access for small local green enterprises in Peru. Listen well to what Leslie has to say. She brings a fantastic wealth of experience from a platform called Verde, which is a self-generating platform where green enterprises come together to make things work from themselves. Leslie, inspire us. Tell us your story. 6 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm presenting Economía Verde, a response to challenge for green SMEs. Sorry. We come from Peru, 33 million people approx. It's one of the 17th mega diverse country in the world, and SMEs, small medium enterprises, represent 95% of businesses in Peru, and more than 70% of the economically active population work under informal conditions. So this is a context in which we are working. The challenges are that critical gaps in educational opportunities, access to health systems, equality, among others. There's also a lot of illegal activities such as illegal mining, drug trafficking, deforestation, among others, which threatens vulnerable groups as well as the environment. And COVID-19 has enhanced many of these inequalities and revealed many vulnerable groups. Peru is one of the countries with the highest death rates because of COVID. Despite that, we have a lot of diversity in culture and also food and also resources, and as I said before, the environment, which also give us a big opportunity to develop small SMEs. Our objectives is strengthening the green SMEs communities, connect opportunities and relevant information with the green community, construct useful alliances that can help green SMEs thrive, and showcase the benefit of the green SMEs. For this reason, we started a platform called economiaverde.p, which tries to create a community of green SMEs and also gives them opportunities through this. For creating this platform, we had a first stage where we had meetings with relevant actors, breakfast workshops, and review information. And that's how we realized that it was important to create this platform. Then we had a second stage, which we'll be talking after, about financial opportunities and obstacles, where we had two surveys, and this gave us important data to create more opportunities for them. And then we had the third stage with this analysis of Peru financial ecosystem. This is a platform we are working with. So first, we understand that we needed a bigger community. So in order to be important and be considered for state laws and also policy brief elaboration. We also understand that it was important to start online shopping because many of that SMEs weren't getting to their consumers because they were not visible. And that's also come with the more visibility for them. This gives them opportunity for unlocking opportunities of the financial system, preparing the ground for fruitful dialogue events, and also strengthening the green SME community. One of the main reasons that we understand that SMEs didn't have credital opportunities was because they had rejections on credit applications. The first 29% of the SMEs and entrepreneurs which were asked understand that because they didn't have a credit application because they didn't have enough budget. So they were rejected. And 27% considered they were having a lot of difficulties in complying with requirements. So that means that many of the enterprises needs to get money in other forms and not necessarily through financial institutions. Also, we had an important question about sources of capital for beginning businesses, and 69% mentioned that they begin their business with personal savings or family loans. This is 55% and 40%. Also, it is important to mention that 30% of businesses closed because of restrictions around COVID, and 7% of them were new, and 6 of them were older than 3 years. So it's also important to understand that in Peru, there's like 3 years possibility of surviving with your enterprise. And most of them don't get to the 3-year transition. And when you go the bridge of the 3 years, you have more possibilities to survive in the entrepreneur world. This is because, as I said before, the informal market is very big, and this comes with also a lot of obstacles. If you're informal, then you will have less possibilities to get a credit opportunity in financial institutions, and in Peru, there's not many options or opportunities for getting finance if it's not for financial institutions or the illegal market. So considering the survey that we did and the information we get, we understand that we needed to get more information and more educational to finance and for applying requirements, because many of them mentioned that they didn't understand how to apply for the credit. So we started to doing webinars related to this. Also, we did bulletins that were sent each month with information that consisted about how to access financial sources, also to different loans and opportunities of funds that were international and also national. So all this information was sent to each entrepreneur every month. And also we did the formulation of 6 policy briefs to help the government, which was in a transition, to understand which things were needed for them. Despite this, we have some challenges that it's important to understand, right? As there's no definition of local green enterprises in Peru. So there is neither a regulatory and policy framework or data available for this sector. This is an important obstacle, because if you don't have the data available, then it's very difficult to create policies around it, because you don't have the evidence to back it. So this could also, despite being an obstacle, this could also be seen as an opportunity and to establish how green SMEs should be in Peru. Last year, there was an important move, and it was created the big law, which tries to difference local green enterprises from local enterprises. So this should be an important step for future policy framework, but still there is just the approve of this law, but it doesn't have the regulation or doesn't have a specific definition of which this should be. It just mentioned that it will consider this difference. Another difficulty is that main external difficulty is the unsensitized financial institution senior management on environmental issues. There's a lack of knowledge of specific activities and risk entitled in environmental enterprises project. And as I mentioned, the lack of definition. This is also very important because financial institutions don't give an important space for environmental and social activities considering businesses. Instead of, when they analyze the credit for them, they don't care if they have an environmental and social approach. They just see if they will have like earnings or investments and also sales. So this also is a thing that it's important to understand and to promote a change in the financial institution, as they should also consider the risk and the importance of these businesses to give them credit. Also, an internal difficulties is the lack of knowledge of financial instruments and how to access to them, as many of the entrepreneurs don't have this information and it's very difficult for them to understand how to get them. Another barriers to access finance is the lack of physical infrastructure, electricity, and communication within the country. Lima is the capital and it has 1/3 of the population of Peru. The other regions have very difficulties in getting, for example, internet or also electricity, and Amazon regions have even more of these difficulties. So it's very weird to expect them to have a better development if they don't have the tools and also the infrastructure to support this. The lack of legal documents also is very difficult for them to access, and as they're required by the financial institutions. Another problem is that also they have difficulties to demonstrate that they are certified by ecological or organic, or they are green. So that is not even considered for them. That's very expensive also. The legal documents are very expensive in Peru. Also, there is very high operating costs in remote areas and low connectivity, which also have a lot of difficulties if you're trying to propose an online shopping and online marketing. And in COVID, it was also very difficult for all these entrepreneurs in other regions to get to different markets because they had very low connectivity. And there's also a lack of innovative and alternative challenges other than conventional financial institutions. So that also creates a very difficult space for the entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Leslie. I'm conscious that we're going to have to close this session completely in 11 minutes.
Okay, this is my last. This is one of my last.
Thank you.
Okay. Other general aspects is that local green SMEs are in need of technical assistance and financial literacy. Also, there's no national strategy focused on local green SMEs. And also financial inclusion pending agenda, diversification of financial products, mobile banking expansion. So recommendations are a specific regulatory policy framework is needed for the promotion of local green SMEs, technical assistance focused on broadening knowledge or financial products available. It's also very important to get capacity building in accounting and marketing to improve credit record and eligibility. And a specific regulatory framework is needed to facilitate financial services to local green SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Leslie. I'm so sorry to have to hurry along. Unfortunately, we do hit a hard deadline. I'd like to move on quickly to South Africa. Elise Hattinge. Elise, I wonder if I could prevail on you at the very last minute on this.
Sure.
Rather than giving us a full overview of the South African situation, I wonder if you could just perhaps, maybe you can do it with or without slides, just maybe reflect on what are the main recommendations that you think need to happen in South Africa? Because we've been hearing a number of problems that have been coming out, and I'm sure you're going to hear resonance between what's happening in India, what's happening in the Caribbean, and what's happening in Peru. I wonder if your final slide would have actually connected with those previous presentations.
Yeah. Now I hear what you're saying, Stuart. I think what I would maybe just do is a very brief touch on maybe more of a positive sense. There is clear policy recommendations, but I think I would like to just provide some clear evidence that there's a green ecosystem support that's increasing, and it's especially for youth and gender inclusion in South Africa. So what we are seeing, just to excite everybody a little bit, if we're looking at the ecosystem, how the signature issues connects to the inclusive finance need, and at the end of the day, looking at how we are increasing our green economy. We've got very much in South Africa a sectoral focus, and at the moment, looking at our decarbonization strategies, industrial strategies, we are finding a lot more mechanisms that is in harmony, supporting the different sectors, and also starting to see evidence of SME support for your local green entrepreneurs that caters within the bigger ecosystem, and how some of the LGEs then within the programs that they join are able to connect the dots. That's why behind me, I also have this image. We start seeing LGEs that are actually pivoting. And if they have, for example, a water technology, they would be able to see, this is the opportunity in the agricultural sector. This is the opportunity within partnering, collaborating with other entrepreneurs to look at your renewable energy solutions, to pump the water, to get the purification water and the technology into the market. So we're starting to see a lot more collaboration. I think that is really key in our ecosystem. Just briefly, we've done a survey with about 100 LGEs out of 1,000 of a database. We've looked at these LGEs problems from and we looked at across gender, across formality, if it was formal or informal, if it was female-owned, Black-owned. We had a very diverse group of entrepreneurs that gave us some really good insights in terms of their own journey of access to finance needs, but also in terms of the COVID challenges. So we've looked specifically in COVID, I'll just go to that slide very quickly, the impact that COVID had on the LGEs, So some of the key ones was really the impact on no operations or income, having to literally stop the business, trying to put food on the table for that period, and then slowly start accessing opportunities in the market and joining other collaborative ecosystem programs to be able to get back on track. So that's been a really big pause in South Africa, is how the LGEs has been affected. So from our survey, again, access to finance is the biggest point. And then there's also, obviously, in terms of your manufacturing, product testing, your early stage of prototyping support, legislation, visibility in the market, costing, capacity, and how to access your markets. And a lot of our ecosystem providers, and I can quickly just touch on that together with the innovative finance that we're finding, a lot of our incubators are actually starting to focus on youth. So the Youth Bridge Trust has got a Green Economy Academy. The Future Females has run 2 green tech programs, over 150 women who benefited. A lot more programs to support the entrepreneurs to become tech-enabled, a lot of online support, how to trade online, and just creating opportunities for inclusion and participation in the sector. That's been for us really the big highlight from the year. And then you've got your more mature type of incubators. Endeavour has got an ecosystem builder. So they are specifically connecting access to market and access to finance, which has been a trend that a lot of the incubators supporting LGEs has been shying away from. They will give the finance training or technical training, but they would not be too bold to say, we will connect you to access to finance and access to market. And for us, that's been key, where you're starting to see the success in scaling and entrepreneurs maturing. And then obviously there's a circular economy accelerator that Patola's doing. So I think that's been quite promising for us, just to see the lines of evidence, but then taking a look at how are these programs that's working quite well, that's scaling currently, being supported by innovative finance. So we have been very fortunate. Green Cape is a sector development agency. They've got a very good database for any LGE to go access what kind of finance is available, contact numbers of the people. So really trying that. And I'm ending off the Green Outcomes Fund. So thank you. That's for me. It's more, what do we do more from here to scale these initiatives? Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Elise, and thank you for doing the most challenging thing of pivoting in the moment to get your your presentation in, given the time we have got. We've got 3 minutes, and I'm going to use them wisely. And in these 3 minutes, I just want to say what I've heard. One, there are legal and policy problems. Local green enterprises work in a world where there are no definitions, are no legal statuses. This is a problem. The financial service offerings that are made available to local green enterprises are not fit for purposes. They're having to rely on family and informal lending. They are designed for other types of companies, not for green enterprises and not for small enterprises. Local green enterprises are weak and they're misunderstood. And where the greatest opportunity comes out is giving them extra support. Elise just at the end spoke about giving them extra support to get included, women and youth, building capacity on technical issues. Denis spoke very much about creating agencies that would begin to be deliberate in providing this greater level of support to the sector. And the fourth point I want to make is that local green enterprises are struggling to survive. But as Peru has shown, collaboration works. As India has shown, collaboration works, connection works. So the issues that we have got here before us, I think, present us with opportunity. Opportunities to work with local green enterprises, to connect them, to build their capacity to become stronger together, to become included, to be able to demand financial services, to be able to shape financial services that are good for them, and that means policy, and to make sure that we're able to punch into the policy space and ensure, as Peru has been working on, to make sure that there is legal status, there is policy status. We need definitions. That takes us to the end of this. And it's a nice pausing moment because the next session that is going to start in half an hour, in the main session, is going to be about inclusion and inequality. I'd like to thank all of our speakers very much for presenting from their hearts, presenting from their work. It's been fabulous to hear everybody's perspectives, and I'm grateful to all of you who have joined. We will be making a summary of these presentations, and we'll make these available to you. But on behalf of the Green Economy Coalition, my warm thanks to you all for your presentations. My warm thanks to you all for attending. Have a good afternoon.